The rain hammered against the windows of the abandoned farmhouse like 1,000 angry fists. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the overgrown fields for brief, flickering moments before plunging everything back into darkness. The wind howled through the broken shutters, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and decay. Inside, in the farthest corner of what was once a barn, a German shepherd named Kaiser lay curled around something precious. His ears stood alert despite the exhaustion in his amber eyes. His thick coat was matted with mud and rain, but he didn't move. He couldn't move. Between his massive paws, wrapped in a torn blanket, was a baby. The infant couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Her tiny chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Her lips were pale, almost blue in the dim light. She hadn't cried in hours, and that terrified Kaiser more than any storm ever could. He licked her face gently, his warm tongue trying to bring color back to her cold skin. She stirred slightly, a weak whimper escaping her lips. Kaiser's heart clenched. He had found her 3 days ago in the wreckage of an overturned car on the mountain road, her mother's lifeless hand still reaching toward the car seat. But how long could he keep her alive out here, alone in the wilderness? Dawn broke gray and unwelcome. Kaiser hadn't slept. The baby had stopped moving altogether during the night, and panic surged through his powerful frame. He nudged her repeatedly, whining deep in his throat, a sound of pure desperation. Then a miracle. Her eyes fluttered open, pale blue and unfocused but open. Kaiser's tail thumped once against the wooden floor. Relief flooded through him, but it was short-lived. He could smell it before he heard it. Humans. 2 of them, moving through the woods with heavy boots and the metallic scent of guns. His body went rigid, every muscle tensed. These weren't rescue workers. The way they moved, the way they talked in low, harsh whispers, these were the wrong kind of men. "Check the barn," one voice growled. "If there's anything valuable left, it's probably in there." Kaiser's lips curled back, revealing white fangs. A low, rumbling growl built in his chest. The baby stirred at the sound, and he immediately silenced himself, ears flat against his skull. He couldn't let them find her. He wouldn't. The barn door creaked open, footsteps on old wood, the smell of cigarette smoke and whiskey. Kaiser made his decision in a heartbeat. He grabbed the blanket gently in his jaws, the baby secured inside, and bolted through a hole in the back wall he discovered days ago. Behind him, shouts erupted. "Something's back there, move." He ran, faster than he'd ever run in his life, his paws pounding against the muddy ground, branches whipping his face. The baby bounced against his chest, and he could feel her tiny fingers clutching at his fur. But where could a dog and an infant hide from armed men in the middle of nowhere? Kaiser's lungs burned as he crashed through the underbrush, following instincts older than memory. There was a place, a cave he'd sheltered in once during a winter storm years ago when he'd been separated from his previous owner during a hiking trip. The sound of pursuit grew louder. Voices, the crack of branches, a gunshot that split the air and sent birds screaming into the sky. He found it, a narrow opening in the rocks, half hidden by fallen logs and hanging vines. Kaiser squeezed through, the baby's blanket catching on the rough stone. He pulled carefully, desperately, until they were both inside. The cave was deeper than it looked, stretching back into cool darkness. Kaiser carried the baby as far as he could before his legs gave out. He collapsed onto the sandy floor, sides heaving, and gently laid her down. She was crying now, thin, weak cries that broke his heart but meant she was alive. Alive and hungry. Kaiser licked her face, her hands trying to soothe her. But he knew the terrible truth. He had no food for her. No milk. No water. He was a dog and she was a human child, and nature had built an impossible wall between what she needed and what he could provide. Outside, the voices grew closer. "Lost the trail, can't be far." "Forget it, probably just a wild dog anyway." The footsteps receded. Silence returned, thick and heavy, but Kaiser knew they'd be back, Men like that always came back. The baby's cries grew weaker. Her skin felt hot now, fevered. Kaiser curled around her, offering what little warmth he could, but he knew it wasn't enough. Was this how it would end? Both of them dying alone in the darkness. As the baby's breathing grew shallower, something stirred in Kaiser's mind. A memory, sharp and clear as broken glass. He'd had a family once, a real one. There had been a woman, Sarah, with gentle hands and a voice like music. She'd found him at a shelter when he was just a year old, all gangly legs and 2 big ears. She'd taken him home, fed him, loved him. And then there had been a baby, Sarah's baby, a little boy named Thomas with the same pale blue eyes as the infant now dying in his paws. Kaiser had watched over Thomas every moment, slept by his crib, walked beside his stroller. The bond between them had been instant and absolute, a dog's instinct to protect his pack. But then came the fire. Kaiser could still smell the smoke, still feel the heat that had torn through their home in the middle of the night. He'd barked and howled until Sarah woke. She'd grabbed Thomas and run for the door, screaming for Kaiser to follow. But the ceiling had collapsed. The flames had cut him off. Sarah's last words to him, shouted through the inferno, had been, "Stay alive, boy, stay alive." He'd escaped through a window, wandered for weeks before ending up in these mountains, alone and broken, unable to forgive himself for surviving when he should have saved them both. Now looking at this baby, this stranger who wasn't Thomas but could have been, Kaiser understood. This was his second chance, his redemption. But how could he save her when he'd failed before? Kaiser's head snapped up. He'd heard something, a sound that didn't belong to the forest. His ears swiveled, trying to pinpoint it. There, faint but unmistakable. A helicopter. His heart hammered. It could be rescue, or it could be the hunters coming back with reinforcements, but he had no choice. The baby's lips were nearly white now. Her chest barely moved. Kaiser grabbed the blanket and dragged her toward the cave entrance. The sound grew louder, the rhythmic chop-chop-chop of rotor blades cutting through the morning air. He emerged into daylight and did something he'd never done before in his life. He threw back his head and howled, long, loud, and desperate, a sound that carried across the valleys and echoed off the mountains. Again and again, his throat raw, his voice breaking, but he didn't stop. The helicopter banked, turned, began moving in his direction. Kaiser howled one more time, then grabbed the blanket and ran into the open field, making himself as visible as possible. The baby bounced against his chest, silent now, terrifyingly silent. The helicopter descended, wind from the rotors flattening the grass around them. Kaiser stood his ground, teeth bared, ready to defend her one last time if these weren't the right people. The door opened. A woman jumped out, medical gear in her hands, a bright orange vest marking her as search and rescue. "Oh my God," she breathed. "We've been looking for this baby for 3 days. The car accident, her mother, we thought she'd been thrown clear but couldn't find." She reached for the infant. Kaiser's growl stopped her cold. "It's okay, boy," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here to help, please let me help her." Kaiser looked at the woman, then at the baby, then back at the woman. And slowly, carefully, he lowered the blanket to the ground. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. The paramedics worked frantically on the baby, hooking up IVs, checking vitals, wrapping her in thermal blankets. Kaiser watched every movement, muscles tensed, ready to intervene if anything felt wrong. "She's hypothermic and severely dehydrated," one medic called out. "But she's alive, barely but alive, another few hours." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. One of the rescuers, a younger man with kind eyes, knelt beside Kaiser. "You saved her life, boy. However you found her, wherever you kept her safe, you're a hero." Kaiser's tail gave a single, exhausted wag. That's when the woman noticed it. She was scanning Kaiser with a device, checking for injuries, and the scanner beeped. She frowned, moved it over his shoulder again. "He's got a chip," she said, surprise in her voice. She pulled out her phone, typed in the number, and her face went pale. "No way," she whispered. "No way." "What is it?" the young man asked. "This dog, Kaiser, he's been missing for over a year. His owner filed reports across 3 states. She scrolled frantically. His owner was Sarah Mitchell. She died in a house fire 14 months ago. The young man's face went slack. "Wait, Sarah Mitchell, wasn't she?" "The baby's aunt," the woman finished, her voice breaking. Sarah Mitchell was this baby's aunt. The mother who died in the car accident was Sarah's younger sister, Emma. The 2 rescuers looked at Kaiser with new eyes, understanding dawning like the sun breaking through storm clouds. This dog hadn't just found a random baby in the woods. Somehow, through instinct or fate or something beyond understanding, he'd found his family. The niece of the woman who'd loved him, the last living connection to the home he'd lost. And he'd protected her with everything he had. But the story wasn't over yet. At the hospital, Kaiser refused to leave the baby's side. He sat in the hallway outside the pediatric intensive care unit, his eyes fixed on the door, ignoring food, ignoring water, ignoring every attempt to move him. The doctors ran tests. The baby, her name was Lily, they discovered from the accident reports, was stabilized, dehydrated, malnourished, suffering from exposure but alive, against all odds alive. Social services arrived, grim-faced people with clipboards and procedures. Lily had no living relatives, they explained. Emma, her mother, had been alone in the world after Sarah died. Lily would go into the foster system. And Kaiser, animal control, wanted to take him to a shelter for evaluation. But then something extraordinary happened. Dr. Rebecca Torres, the physician who'd been treating Lily, emerged from the PICU. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too much loss. She looked at Kaiser, then at the social worker, then at the animal control officer. "No," she said simply. "Excuse me," the social worker replied. "I'm going to foster this child," Dr. Torres said, her voice steady and sure. "And that dog stays with her. That's not negotiable." The social worker sputtered. "You can't just, there are procedures." "That dog saved her life," Dr. Torres cut in. "He kept her alive for 3 days in the wilderness. He protected her from exposure, from predators, from men who might have hurt her. He's bonded to her, and she's going to need stability, continuity, and love. He provides all 3. She knelt in front of Kaiser. "I lost my own daughter 5 years ago," she said softly, tears in her eyes. "Car accident like Lily's mother. I've been empty ever since. Maybe this is fate. Maybe this is chance. But I'm not letting either of them face the world alone." Kaiser's tail wagged slowly, once, twice. He stepped forward and pressed his head against her shoulder. And in that moment, a new family was born. The living room was full of sunlight. Lily, now 18 months old, toddled across the carpet on unsteady legs, giggling as she clutched Kaiser's fur for balance. He walked slowly, carefully, letting her use him as a furry walker. "Kai Kai," she squealed, the only name she could manage for him. Kaiser's tail wagged, his amber eyes bright in content. The nightmares had finally stopped. The guilt had finally eased. He'd found his purpose again. Dr. Torres, Rebecca, as Lily called her Becca, now watched from the couch, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The adoption papers had been finalized last month. Lily was legally hers, and Kaiser, who'd started as a foster dog, had become permanent too. On the mantel sat 2 photographs, one of Sarah, young and smiling, holding baby Thomas, one of Emma, laughing at some private joke, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. "They'd be proud of you," Rebecca said to Kaiser. "Both of them. You kept the family alive." Kaiser walked Lily over to the couch. The little girl climbed up, curled against Rebecca's side, and yawned. Kaiser jumped up carefully and lay down beside them, his head resting on Rebecca's lap, Lily's tiny hand tangled in his fur. Outside, the world turned. Inside, 3 broken pieces had found each other and become whole. In the darkest moments when hope seems lost and the world feels cruel, love finds a way. It might come on 4 legs instead of 2. It might speak in loyalty instead of words. But it comes. Kaiser didn't just save Lily's life. He saved his own soul. And in doing so, he taught us all something profound. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's choice. Sometimes it's chance. And sometimes it's a German shepherd who refuses to give up, even when the odds are impossible. Because that's what heroes do. They protect, they endure, they love. And they never, ever abandon their pack. Remember, the strongest bonds aren't formed in moments of joy. They're forged in the fire of survival, tested by loss, and proven in the simple act of refusing to let go. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because someone out there needs to be reminded that miracles still happen, that second chances are real, and that love, true love, never gives up.